Hello, everyone. Welcome to Jackie Does Stuff. I'm Jackie, and I do stuff. And I'm so sorry to be making a car video. Like, I kind of never thought I was going to do that. But, yeah, I've been super, super busy, and I only have a couple of minutes in between chores and errands and stuff today. But I really wanted to get this down, on wax because it's just been racing through my mind and I just need to get it out. I just have been having a lot of thoughts about a lot of things lately, but I had this conversation with a good friend of mine the other day, and he said, you should maybe make a video about this because you obviously feel very strongly about it. So here I am doing that. So today I want to talk a little bit about history, but I mean, history is an extremely broad topic. So what I want to start first by saying is I am not a historian, like not a professional historian. I'm what I'm what others have called a history fan. I'm a fan of history. I like history a lot. I'm very interested in it. I have nuanced opinions about it. I have put a lot of thought into it. And I used to be kind of like I used to be a tour guide in a couple of different places, so I've focused on different kind of like aspects, corners of history, and I find myself with lots of very specific thoughts and feelings about it. And I don't really want to get into all of that today, but I can totally talk about history if you guys are interested in hearing about it, and maybe I will anyway. But today what I want to talk about is like some people's conception of history that I find upsetting to me personally. So with all of that said, so I found myself listening to a podcast the other day, and I'm not going to say the name of it because I don't really want to put anybody on blast. And that episode was from a couple of years ago. So, I mean, maybe it got better, but I ended up unsubscribing from the podcast because the vibe was just way off for me. So I was listening to a podcast about Viking history, and Viking history is always so fraught anyway, because, people are interested in it for a lot of different reasons. I personally am interested in it because I am fascinated by and have a certain respect for indigenous peoples of all over the world, and things like prehistory and Stone Age technology and stuff like that. I'm very interested in how people have use the resources around them in order to survive and eventually to thrive. And I find indigenous peoples very fascinating. I also happen to be descended from Vikings, as you can tell from my blue eyes. I find them interesting for that reason, is because I consider them to be my direct ancestors. And also I consider them to be the ancestors of a lot of our culture, because a lot of white people, include Irish specifically, but also Anglo-Saxons, English people, white people, what we now consider to be white people, are of Viking descent, and they were a very silent people. They didn't have a writing system, or they did, but they didn't use it for that, and so we don't have a whole lot of like their own we don't have their voice, and so we project a lot of things onto them. And so they're very mysterious. All sorts of Northern Europeans, the Celts also, the Vikings, a lot of Germanic tribes, Northern Europeans who also I am descended from. I find very interesting because they're so mysterious, like because we only have a little of this and a little of that, and you can kind of like parse through like, why did they do this and why did they do that, and what could this have meant, and all of that. The more mysterious, the more intriguing I feel like, although I am a person who likes like solid answers, so that can be kind of tricky for me. But I'm fascinated by them for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons why it's such a fraught topic is because the Vikings, which is what we call them, but that's not what they would have been called. That would be kind of like calling us like the construction workers. Like when we consider ourselves American, Viking is like a job that you could have. So, it's like if we were called the carpenters, I don't know. So, I guess, scholarly, they would be called like Old Norse, but for all intents and purposes, let's just call them the Vikings. I find Viking history interesting because I like to see how they survived in such a a stark habitat. So, living like way in the far north, living up where there are 6 months of winter, where they are basically still using like stone tools a lot of the time. Like it's very, very like primitive, indigenous society. And, how do you survive in times like that? And that's like part of why we have like milk and dairy culture, is because like, why, how do you survive the winter? You drink milk. Like, why? Because like plants don't grow, and because there are animals, but you're trying to hold on to them because you don't have that many, because you're living in an extremely hostile environment. And so you don't want to just go around killing cows every time you want to eat something. So what do? You drink their blood and you drink their milk. And it's like, that's actually kind of weird and gross when you think about it, but it's survival. That's what survival is like. And you find ways of making it through. And I find that personally, very interesting and very fascinating. And it makes me think, like, what would I do if I were in their situation? And how could I survive? And how could I thrive even? And like, ooh, what did they do that we can learn from? Like, maybe we can take some of their knowledge and utilize it today. Or maybe we can take some of their knowledge and we can say, oh, that was actually like a really bad idea. We definitely shouldn't do that. And that's how I feel about history. Is I find it, very interesting to like pick up and look at and see how I can use it in my life. And also I think it's very important to remember that people in history were indeed people. Like, I think that we tend to think of them as kind of like mythical figures, like everybody was going around standing very tall and proclaiming things in like a deep Shakespearean baritone about everything. And it's like, no, they were kind of just dudes, like they were playing board games and hanging out a lot of the time. Like, people are people all over. We've always been people. We've been people since the caves. We've been people since we came down from the trees. And so, I like to think of them that way. Like, people are individuals. You look back at history and it's like, yes, the Vikings did this and the Vikings did that. And it's like, well, maybe one guy did, but, that's not to say that the other guys did. And that brings me back to the point that I was trying to make, which is I was listening to this podcast, Who Shall Remain Nameless, and they did have a certain amount of a perspective that I found upsetting personally. I'm not saying other people should feel this way. I'm just saying that, like, for me personally, I find it like, it's not how I like to engage in history. So first of all, there was a lot of talk about military tactics and warfare and stuff. And that is a huge part of history. But for me, like, if that's your only thing that you're interested in about history, I find that very troubling. Like, partly because I find it kind of boring. I mean, war is interesting. And like, war and politics are like, movers and shakers of history. It is how things happen. It's how paradigms shift. It's like a good way of measuring that stuff. But to me, it's a little bit like saying like, yes, the 90s, George H.W. Bush. And it's like, yeah, I guess, but like other stuff also happened in the 90s. Like, we had hip hop, like culture is important. Fashion is important. People's idea, like the things that they were doing, the jokes that they made, the food that they ate, the crafts that they did. I mean, these are all exactly as important as, the Second Punic War or whatever, like, I'm not saying that war is not interesting or not worth studying. I'm just saying, like, if your only thing is like, yes, I've studied the Romans, for example, Julius Caesar and Augustus. Like, I don't know, man. I just find that like boring and weird. Like, why is that the only thing that you think about? It makes me think that like, that's what you like, like, it makes me think that you go around thinking about warfare, and more importantly, like domineering warfare, like not like wars that are just, but wars that are of oppression. Like, like specifically to like go out and do war on people in order to subjugate them, Pax Romana type stuff. And I mean, yeah, that all happened. That is history. Like, I'm absolutely not saying that that's not history, but I'm just saying, like, there's more to history than just warfare and oppression, because there's more to life than warfare and oppression. Like, we're in warfare and oppression right now in this point in history, but like, is that the only thing that's going on? I mean, it's a very important thing that's going on, but like, there's other stuff, like, there's other stuff. History is not history is not just like history is not just about who's killing whom, who's in charge of whom. It's also about the people, you know? We are all a part of history. And in the future, in some far distant future, you know, archaeologists, when they are our descendants, you know, come looking for us, you know, if they don't have the internet, and they might not, because the internet is a physical item, it's cables and stuff that can be destroyed or lost, or be rendered inaccessible through like loss of technology, you know. I mean, these things happen. Like if they lose all of our explanations for ourselves and all they have left are like items here and there, like, does that make you comfortable to think that they are going to look back on us and be like, ah, yes, in the year 2025, they were all super into Beyonce, you know, like, because a whole lot of people are. I like Beyonce, but does everyone? No, it was everyone super into the genocide in Gaza. Like, no. Was everyone against it? Also, no. A lot of people are, and they should be, in my opinion. But like, you know, things are not. People are people. Every single person is different from every single other person. Every single person has a point of view, and they all have their aptitudes, their interests, the things that they find scary, the things that they find interesting, the things that they find beautiful, the things they find worth talking about or not talking about, their relationship with their parents, their relationship with their own culture. So we can have like a discussion about things like in Viking culture, you know, well, the women would do this and the men would do that. And it's like, that's actually, I find that to be the beginning of the conversation rather than the end of it. That is something that I do have an issue with. Some of the way that people talk about history is when they say, well, it was like this back then. I mean, look around you right now. You know, are things like this or like that now? I mean, kind of, I guess. You know, we have a dominant culture, but does everyone follow it? Of course not. Does everyone have the same opinion about it? Of course not. I mean, you have some people who are very, you know, the dominant culture, they love it. They're big fans of it. You know, they want it to be that way forever. But then you have some people who are like, I mean, I do it because my dad did it, or I do it because I don't really think about it that much. You know, I do it, but, I'm not really all that about it. You know, I go watch the fireworks every 4th of July, but like, you know, that's just what you do, you know. But some people are way into it. They think that it's super, super important. They think that it's not this, you know, it's the foundation of our culture or whatever. And then there are some people who are also like, actually, like, I hate that. I hate that we do that. I hate that we dress like this. I hate that we talk like this. I hate some of the things that we do. And all of this is history. You know, and I find it really rubs me the wrong way when people talk about history like, yes, back then they were like this and like that, and also they did war at each other, because it's just like, that makes me think that that's what you think about people, period. You know, like, it makes me think that that's just what your opinion is of humans now. That, or rather, I guess, like, that's your opinion of history because that's what you're like. You know, like, well, I am very interested in men do this and women do that. I'm very interested in attacking and subjugating my enemies. I find that very interesting. And so that's what history must be, because that's what I find interesting. And because that's what all the books are about and stuff. And that's just like not how people work. People are just not like that. People are people all over, you know, and I'm not saying, like, none of that stuff happened. I'm just saying that that's not all that happened. And I think that a lot of things like, for example, textile archaeology, which I find really interesting because textiles are a technology, you know, I think in our current day, people are like, oh, fashion, crafts, those are women things, you know, oh yeah, I'm going to be over here talking about war and you can be over there talking about fashion because that's like a girl thing. Or, oh, well, that just doesn't interest me very much. And it's like, I mean, okay, if it doesn't interest you very much, war doesn't interest me very much, but I gotta read about it anyways, because that's what is recorded, you know? And it's like, I think that if people would kind of put away their modern hang-ups over stuff like gender or stuff like subjugating their enemies or whatever, I think that they would realize that they're projecting a lot of things onto history that are not there. and that they're missing a lot of things about history that are there, that are so interesting, and that have a way of connecting us with our, in my case, literal ancestors, but also like the ancestors of our shared humanity. It's like you're missing the forest for the trees. Like you're looking for things and you're finding it, but you're missing everything else. And it's also, I think, teaching you how to look at people now. And I don't think I like the way that is teaching you that. I mean, yeah. Well, I have to go. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.